Could one burst of gunfire near a merchant ship force India to rewrite its strategy for the world's most dangerous oil gateway? Because in the Strait of Hormuz, a few tense minutes can threaten fuel prices, national security, and millions of ordinary lives. If stories about hidden power behind global trade interest you, tap like, subscribe for more clear geopolitical stories, and share this video with someone who watches the world beyond the headlines. The real story is not simply Iran against India. It is about pressure, uncertainty, and the moment New Delhi decided that distance was no longer protection. To understand what changed, begin with geography. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow opening between Iran and Oman, linking the Persian Gulf with the Gulf of Oman and then the Arabian Sea. At its tightest point, it is only about 21 nautical miles wide. Commercial ships follow even narrower traffic lanes, one moving in and one moving out, with a separation zone between them. That means tankers, gas carriers, cargo vessels, patrol boats, drones, aircraft, and warships all operate inside a compressed space. There is little room for error and almost no room for a careless political signal. The strait matters because energy moves through it on a breathtaking scale. Roughly 1/5 of the petroleum liquids consumed worldwide passes through this corridor in normal periods. Qatar also sends much of its liquefied natural gas through these waters. India sits close enough to depend on this flow, but far enough away to lack control over the gate itself. India imports more than 4/5 of the crude oil it uses. A disruption does not remain at sea. It reaches fuel pumps, airlines, factories, fertilizer plants, trucking companies, family budgets, and government finances. Hormuz is geography translated into life. This is why the phrase, "Iran fired on Indian ships," needs careful handling. In several modern incidents, the vessels involved were not always flying India's flag. Some were heading to India, carrying Indian sailors, supplying Indian buyers, or operating inside. Sea routes vital to India. Claims of direct Iranian responsibility have also been disputed in important cases. Tehran has denied accusations around some attacks, while other governments have presented intelligence pointing toward Iran. So the danger was real, but the legal picture was cloudy. That uncertainty was not a side issue. It became the heart of India's problem at sea. The deeper background stretches back to the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s. As the fighting expanded, both sides attacked. Shipping connected to the other's oil trade. Neutral merchant crews discovered that a civilian flag did not guarantee safety. Mines, missiles, aircraft, and fast attack boats turned commercial routes into a battlefield known as the tanker war. Major powers sent escorts and warships. Insurance costs climbed. Captains judged military intentions while carrying civilian cargo. India watched because its economy needed open sea lanes. The lesson was uncomfortable. Neutrality could reduce political risk, but not stop a weapon already launched. That old lesson returned in a more complex form decades later. Iran had built layered tools for pressure around the Gulf. Coastal missiles, naval mines, submarines, drones, fast boats, and forces able to board merchant vessels. The United States and regional states maintained powerful fleets and air defenses. Every confrontation, therefore, carried two opposite possibilities. A small clash might be contained within hours, or it might pull several countries into a widening conflict. For India, choosing a side loudly could endanger energy, ties, citizens, and diplomacy. Doing nothing, however, could invite danger and make Indian trade appear easy to intimidate. The immediate turning point came in 2019 after a series of attacks and seizures shook shipping near Hormuz and the Gulf of Oman. Tankers were damaged. Images of burning hulls moved across television screens. Washington blamed Iran for key incidents and released evidence it said supported that case. Iran rejected the charges. The argument over attribution became fierce, yet ship. Owners could not wait for a courtroom standard of proof. They needed routes, schedules, crews, and cargo protected immediately. New Delhi faced the same clock. Its leaders could debate responsibility in private, but the Navy had to act in public. India's answer was Operation Sankalp, launched in June 2019 to help secure Indian-linked merchant traffic moving through the region. Warships including INS Chennai and INS Sunayana were sent for maritime security duties. Surveillance aircraft added a wider view. Naval teams communicated with merchant vessels, watched suspicious activity, and created an Indian presence near routes. The mission was defensive, but it carried a message. India was not closing the strait, threatening Iran, or joining a war. It was saying that commercial ships connected to India would no longer face the danger alone. Protection had moved from promise to persistent deployment. This response changed the rules, but not in the dramatic way a headline might suggest. India did not rewrite international law, and it did not claim command over Hormuz. The change was in Indian behavior. Before, a crisis could be treated mainly as a diplomatic emergency. After Sankalp, naval presence became a form of economic security. A destroyer or patrol vessel was no longer just a weapon for wartime combat. It became an escort, a sensor, a communication center, a rescue platform, and a floating signal of national intent. The boundary between military defense and commercial protection had become thinner. Why was this approach smarter than a loud retaliation? Because attribution at sea can be deliberately confusing. A drone may fly without markings. A mine may be attached at night. A fast boat can disappear among coastal traffic. A vessel may be owned in one country, registered in another, managed from a third, insured in a fourth, crewed by several nationalities, and carrying cargo for India. If New Delhi reacted only when an Indian flag was hit, adversaries could exploit every legal gap. By protecting Indian interests rather than only Indian flags, the Navy adopted a realistic definition of security. There was another important choice. India did not place its ships under a foreign coalition. It coordinated where useful, but kept operational independence. That mattered because India has relationships on every side of this contest. It buys energy from Gulf Arab states. It has defense and technology ties with Israel. It works with the United States. Meanwhile, it maintains ties with Iran and sees Chabahar port as a route to Afghanistan and Central Asia. A formal anti-Iran posture could damage those interests, and absent India could damage them too. Independent deployment offered a narrow path between submission and escalation. This balance is often mistaken for hesitation. It is better understood as strategic autonomy made visible. India wanted enough force to protect shipping, but not so much political theater that protection became provocation. A ship's radar could track threats without a minister naming an enemy. A helicopter could inspect an area without declaring war. A captain could answer a distress call even if the vessel carried another flag. This flexibility made the mission useful across crises. It also limited an opponent's ability to paint India as part of a hostile bloc. The Navy created options, while diplomats kept dialogue open. The operational challenge remained severe. Escorting ships is not as simple as sailing beside them. Merchant vessels move at different speeds and follow commercial schedules. Naval crews must build a recognized picture from radar, aircraft, satellites, radio reports, and intelligence. They must identify a contact before it comes close enough to threaten, yet avoid treating every fishing boat as an attacker. They need rules for warnings, boarding, rescue, and force. They must watch above the water, on the surface, and below it. In narrow seas, one mistaken judgment can cause the very crisis the mission was designed to prevent itself. Now imagine the view from a merchant bridge at night. The sea is black, the radar screen is crowded, and a fast contact turns toward your route. You do not know whether it is a patrol, a fisherman, a smuggler, or a hostile team. Your crew may come from 5 countries. Your cargo may be worth millions. And the nearest coast belongs to a state at the center of the dispute. Then a calm naval voice arrives by radio, confirms your position, and says a warship is monitoring the area. No shot has been fired, yet the risk has already changed. That invisible effect is deterrence. Deterrence is not only the promise to strike back. It is the effort to convince another actor that an attack will fail, and be witnessed, be attributed, or cost more than it gains. India's ships complicated the calculations of anyone considering harassment. Surveillance reduced darkness. Escorts reduced isolation. Communications reduced panic. Rescue capability reduced the human cost if prevention failed. None of this guaranteed safety, but it changed probabilities. In maritime security, probabilities matter enormously. A small reduction in risk across hundreds of voyages can protect cargo and keep one incident from becoming a national crisis. If this deeper view is giving you more than the usual shouting match, help this channel in a different way. Press like as your signal for careful analysis, subscribe so the next crisis makes sense before it becomes noise, and share this story with one curious friend. Now look at what happened after 2019. Operation Sankalp did not disappear when headlines moved on. India maintained deployments and continued monitoring merchant traffic across the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman. This persistence was crucial. A temporary patrol answers an event. A sustained mission changes expectations among captains, companies, officials, and attackers. Persistence also sends a message to India's commercial sector. Ship owners make decisions based on risk, not patriotism alone. If they expect delayed government action, they buy expensive insurance, alter routes, postpone cargo, or pass costs to consumers. If they know a naval information network is active, they can report threats earlier and plan more confidently. The military cannot erase market fear, but it can prevent fear from feeding itself. This is one way sea power enters the economy without most citizens noticing. A warship hundreds of miles away can influence transport, credit, inventory, and prices on a neighborhood shelf. Then came a new wave of danger. In late 2023 and 2024, the broader waters around the Arabian Sea, Red Sea, and Gulf of Aden saw drones, missiles, hijacking attempts, and attacks linked to regional conflicts. The threats came from different actors and did not all occur inside Hormuz. That distinction matters. Iran-backed groups such as the Houthis had their command structures and motives, even when Tehran provided support. Treating every incident as a direct Iranian order would be careless. Yet for a captain or naval planner, different origins could produce the same emergency, damage and lives at risk. One incident brought the issue close to India. In December 2023, the tanker Pluto was struck by a drone in the Arabian Sea while sailing toward India. The vessel was not Indian flagged, but it was bound for an Indian port and carried Indian crew. The Pentagon said the drone came from Iran. Iran rejected accusations that it directed attacks. India did not rush into a verdict. It sent naval and Coast Guard assets, assisted the ship, examined the damage, and opened an investigation. That sequence revealed the doctrine: save people, secure evidence, maintain presence, then judge attribution carefully. A second incident showed the opposite side of India's toolkit. In April 2024, Iranian forces seized the container ship MSC Ares near the Strait of Hormuz. The ship was Portuguese flagged and linked to an Israeli-owned company. 17 Indian nationals were among the crew. Here, responsibility for the seizure was not hidden. Iran's Revolutionary Guard took the vessel. India used diplomacy to gain consular access and work for the sailors' release. This was not a naval rescue. Movie. No Indian destroyer stormed the deck. Restraint protected the hostages, while the regional deployment ensured India was not blind or absent. Taken together, Pluto and MSC Ares exposed the tension. Sometimes the attacker is uncertain and evidence must be collected. Sometimes the responsible state is obvious, but force would make the human danger worse. A rigid response would fail in one case or the other. India therefore relied on a ladder of options: warnings, tracking, escorts, boarding teams, rescue, investigation, diplomatic pressure, and combat power in reserve. The key was not always to climb the ladder. The key was to control the climb. That is a quieter kind of power, yet in a crowded waterway, it can beat instant revenge. India also expanded the meaning of whom a navy should help. During the recent shipping crisis, Indian warships responded to distress calls from foreign-flagged vessels and crews of many nationalities. They provided firefighting support, medical aid, damage, assessment and protection against piracy or attempted boarding. These actions were humanitarian, but they were strategic, too. Every successful rescue built trust with shipping companies and governments. It showed that India could provide public security without demanding alliance membership in return. This strengthened India's claim to be a responsible first responder in the Indian Ocean, rather than protecting only its own ships. This wider role depended on information. Modern maritime security is a contest over awareness before it becomes a contest of weapons. India fused reports from naval aircraft, satellites, coastal radars, merchant ships, and regional information centers. Its P-8I patrol aircraft could scan huge areas while helicopters and drones examined contacts closely. Information sharing allowed a warning near one vessel to protect others farther away. It also helped commanders separate piracy, smuggling, mechanical trouble, and military action. The better the picture, the less likely a nervous crew would overreact. In Hormuz, knowing what happens can be as valuable as firepower, but no amount of awareness removes the physics of the strait. Iran's coastline overlooks the northern side. Iranian-controlled islands sit close to shipping lanes. Land-based missiles can threaten targets at sea. Mines can slow traffic when few are found, because every suspected object demands caution. Small boats can approach from several directions. Drones are cheap compared with the ships and cargo they endanger. Closing Hormuz completely would also hurt Iran, since Iran needs the Gulf for trade and oil exports. Yet a complete closure is not necessary to create economic shock. Fear can delay ships and lift prices. This is where headlines about changing the rules can mislead. India cannot guarantee that Hormuz will remain open by itself. The United States, Fifth Fleet, Oman, Gulf states, European navies, and commercial operators all shape security there. International law, local power, and global energy markets overlap. What India changed was its threshold for action. A threat did not need to reach Mumbai harbor before becoming an Indian security issue. A ship did not need the national flag before receiving attention. And assistance did not require India to endorse every policy of the recipient. Strategic distance was replaced by selective responsibility. There were limits to this model. Continuous deployments cost money, wear down ships, and strain crews. India must protect the Eastern Indian Ocean, watch the Arabian Sea, prepare for China, counter submarines, fight piracy, and respond to disasters. Every destroyer near Hormuz is a destroyer unavailable somewhere else. Merchant traffic is too large to place a warship beside every vessel. Air surveillance has gaps. Intelligence can be wrong. A determined attacker may still break through. The strategy works by reducing risk, not abolishing it. That honest distinction matters because exaggerated promises create pressure for reckless action after the next attack. There is also a difficult escalation problem. Suppose an Indian escorted tanker is attacked and evidence points toward an Iranian unit. Does India fire immediately, strike the launch site later, seize an Iranian vessel, demand compensation, release the evidence, and increase patrols? Each option carries consequences for sailors, energy supplies, Indians living across the Gulf, and relations with countries. A military response that looks strong for one day could produce weeks of attacks. A weak response could invite repetition. The important decision may therefore be setting rules of engagement before a crisis, when leaders can think without anger or panic. Those rules must cover more than bullets and missiles. They must define when a naval commander can jam a drone, block a fast boat, fire a warning shot, board a suspicious vessel, or use force to defend a merchant crew. They must also define how evidence is recorded and shared. Cameras, radar tracks, recovered fragments, radio calls, and witness accounts can shape the political battle after the physical one ends. If India acts, it needs credibility. If India chooses restraint, it needs to explain why. Documentation prevents an adversary from controlling the story and helps allies support India with confidence. Technology will make the challenge harder. Autonomous drones can search areas. Artificial intelligence can help identify patterns, but it can also create false confidence. Cyber attacks can disrupt port systems, cargo records, or navigation. Satellite signals can be jammed or spoofed. A tanker may believe it is in one place while its display shows another. Deepfake audio could imitate a port authority or naval command. The next confrontation may begin with confusion rather than an explosion. India's advantage will depend on combining machines with human judgment. Sensors can detect movement. They cannot fully understand intention, fear, deception, or political consequence. Energy policy is part of the naval answer, too. India has diversified suppliers, built petroleum reserves, expanded renewable energy, and looked for routes that reduce exposure to a single choke point. The United Arab Emirates has a pipeline to Fujairah outside Hormuz. Saudi Arabia can move some oil toward the Red Sea through its east-west system, but these alternatives cannot replace every barrel or gas shipment passing through the strait. Diversification buys time. It does not erase. Geography. The stronger India's reserves and alternatives become, the less pressure leaders face to make a military choice during the start of disruption. Before we enter the final lesson, make one small move with real reach. Like this video if calm facts matter, subscribe if you want strategy explained without drama, and share it into a group where one discussion could begin. The final lesson starts with India's identity. India long described itself as a major power with an independent voice. Hormuz tested whether that idea could survive contact with danger. Independence means little if a country needs another navy to protect its trade. It also means little if pride pushes that country into someone else's war. India needed independent capability and disciplined courage. That combination is visible in the gap between presence and provocation. Presence says, we're here, we're watching, and we can help. Provocation says, choose between backing down and fighting us. The first creates options. The second destroys them. India's deployments were strongest when they made merchant crews safer while leaving diplomats space to work. This does not mean force should never be used. If a ship or crew faces a lethal attack, restraint can become abandonment, but force should serve an objective: stop the threat, protect life, preserve navigation, and avoid expanding the conflict beyond what security requires. The title of this story contains another trap: the idea that ships possess a single nationality. Shipping has layers: flag, ownership, operator, cargo, destination, insurer, and crew may all point to different countries. That complexity gives trade flexibility, but it makes protection politically difficult. When Camp Pluto was hit, was it a foreign ship, an India-bound ship, or a ship carrying Indian lives? The answer was all three. When MSC Ares was seized, was it Portuguese, Israeli-linked, or an Indian crisis? Again, all three. India's new rule was practical: map national interest across the network, not one flag. There's a human reason for that rule. Indian sailors form a large part of the maritime workforce. They serve on ships India does not own, and flags India does not control. When trouble begins, families in Goa, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, and elsewhere do not care about corporate registration charts. They want to know whether someone is coming. A government that sees only flags may miss its citizens. A navy that sees people, routes, and economic links can respond. This human network turns shipping incidents into domestic events. It also explains why consular diplomacy and naval readiness must cooperate. The economic reason is equally direct. A tanker does not need to sink to cause loss. Delay alone can trigger penalties. Missed refinery schedules, higher insurance, and expensive rerouting. If several ships hesitate, traders may bid up prices before any shortage appears. Markets react to expectation. That means a naval deployment can have value even when it never fights. By lowering uncertainty, it supports confidence. By showing readiness, it discourages attacks. By collecting evidence, it prevents rumor from driving decisions. The best result may look uneventful. Ships pass, prices remain stable, and the public never realizes how close disruption came. Still, India must avoid believing presence equals control. A warship can be surprised. A missile can travel faster than a decision chain. A mine can remain hidden for months. A hostage situation can neutralize superior firepower. Regional actors may act below the threshold that justifies retaliation. They may harass one ship, pause, deny, and repeat elsewhere. This gray zone favors patience and ambiguity. To compete there, India needs legal experts, intelligence officers, diplomats, naval commanders, cyber teams, and energy planners working from the picture. Sea power is no longer only about fleets. It is the state thinking as one system. Cooperation with Oman deserves attention. Oman sits on the southern side of Hormuz and tries to keep channels open with Iran, Gulf states, Western powers, and India. Access, port visits, exercises, and diplomatic trust with Oman can give India practical reach without turning it into a challenge against Iran. This is the quiet architecture behind visible deployments. Ships need fuel, maintenance, information, and friendly ports. Commanders need partners who understand local traffic and political sensitivities. A dramatic speech lasts minutes. Reliable access built over years can decide whether a navy arrives early, stays long enough, and responds with local knowledge. Relations with Iran are just as important. India and Iran disagree on issues, but they also share history, trade, regional interests, and the Chabahar project. Keeping direct communication reduces the chance that a naval encounter becomes a mystery. It gives New Delhi a channel to protest, ask questions, seek crew access, or clarify intent. Dialogue is not surrender. Dialogue is more useful when backed by ships capable of protecting citizens. The strongest position is not friendship without leverage or force without contact. It is the ability to communicate clearly while showing that harassment will produce attention, evidence, and a response. What then changed in the Strait of Hormuz? Not the map, not Iran's arsenal, not international law. India began treating maritime trade as a security front before war began. It established a habit of presence, broadened protection beyond flag ownership, linked rescue with deterrence, and kept military action under political control. These ideas are not unique to India, but their combination fits India's position. India is powerful, yet not dominant, dependent on Gulf energy, yet friendly with competing camps, eager for influence, yet cautious about alliances. Its doctrine had to match those contradictions, rather than pretend they did not exist. The next crisis will test whether this approach is durable. It may begin with a drone, a boarding, a mine, a cyber failure, or a false report designed to trigger panic. The images will be incomplete. Social media will assign blame before investigators arrive. Markets will react. Families will demand answers. Opponents will call caution, weakness, and restraint betrayal. In that moment, the hardest task will be separating urgency from haste. India must move fast enough to protect life, but slowly enough to protect truth. A mature power is not one that always fires. It is one that can choose. For viewers far from the sea, this can feel abstract. But every light switched on, every bus fueled, every package delivered, and every meal moved by truck rests on invisible routes. Sailors cross those routes while most of us sleep. Their safety depends on decisions made in rooms and embassies we rarely see. The Strait of Hormuz is not only a line on a map, it is a test of whether governments can protect life without turning fear into war. India's response matters because it tried to hold both duties at once, defend the lifeline and keep the fuse unlit. So remember the change. India did not conquer Hormuz, silence Iran, or remove danger from the sea. It did something disciplined. It moved its protective line outward toward the ships, crews, and cargo that keep the nation running. It learned to answer uncertainty with presence, aggression with options, and crisis with steel and dialogue. That is how rules change. Not through one explosive moment, but through a new standard repeated until everyone expects it. In the world's narrowest pressure points, power is not proved by starting the loudest war. Power is proved by keeping a passage open without losing judgment.